I don't know if you're like me, but along the way in life, sometimes you pick up some phrases, you pick up some sayings that just become kind of part of who you are. You find yourself using them over and over, and sometimes you forget where you got them from. Sometimes you remember really well. I've got a number of those that my kids could probably quote to you, some of my students could probably quote to you. I remember George Sweeting, who is the president and then chancellor of Moody Bible Institute, used to say, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. It works. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Now, if you don't know what the main thing is, then you got a problem. But that's a different quote. Doug Lanier used to say, he was a guy that I knew through torchbearers, he used to say, your problem isn't your problem. Your problem is you don't know what your problem is. That one works for me an awful lot. We're actually going to come back to that one. Ian Thomas used to say, the scriptures are amazingly simple, yet simply amazing. I'm like, that kind of works. I like that little turn of phrase too. Marty likes that one, yeah? And then Alan Tomlinson, a more recent professor of mine, used to say, I can't teach you what you already know. Well, you don't know what you don't know until you know. I had to sit and ponder that one. I can't teach you what you already know, but you don't know what you don't know until you know. Well, this phrase, your problem isn't your problem is you don't know what your problem is one that I felt like I wrestled with at least for the first several years of our marriage. Whenever Pam and I would get into it, and it wasn't bad, but just the slice of the frustration, the little thing, we'd find ourselves starting to get on that crazy cycle where I would say something unloving to her, and then she might treat me with a little bit of disrespect, and that would cause me to say something, not cause me, I would choose to say something unloving back to her, and this cycle would get going. It's like, where's it coming from? Where's that starting from? Why is it happening? I didn't know. And then one day, as I mentioned before, I was driving home from the seminary. I can see exactly where I was when it hit me, and I heard it, and I pulled off, and I got back to the house and said, I need to get a copy of the program I just listened to from Focus on the Family, because it just spoke to me like nothing ever has before. I think I understand now what my problem is. You see, my problem wasn't my problem. My problem was I didn't understand what my problem was. And when I heard some of the things from the speaker they had on, I went, I think I'm starting to understand my problem. I see blue and she sees pink, and we don't see through the same color, and we don't use the same language, and we don't talk the same way, we don't emote the same way. And I thought marriage meant we were supposed to start thinking like each other and start acting like each other. We both thought the same way and did the same thing. Boy, see how clueless I was? Some of you have been married a while and just laughed. It's like, that's not the way it works. I had to come to realize I think differently than she thinks. And I see the world through a different lens than she sees the world through. And if we see nothing else in Ephesians chapter 5 these last several weeks, I hope it's that men and women are different. Now, at the simplest level, these are core truths that we hold to as a church. We know that God created male and female. We know that the family is the core, foundational building block that God chose to build his people on. He's chosen to build his church on that. He builds nations on that. So at the very core of our existence, we know men and women are different. We know there's two genders. That's why we look at some of the craziness that's going on in the world around us and shake our heads and go, how can you even, what in the world is going on? But somehow, when we get down to our own relationships and our own marriages, sometimes our problem isn't our problem. Our problem is we don't know what our problem is. And we've come back to men and women are different. They're commanded to act differently in the marriage relationship in Scripture. Why? Because they're different. And they were created different. And when we see it in the culture out there, the craziness about men and women and gender things, we can point at it and just kind of go, oh my goodness, look what a screwed up mess they've made. But sometimes in our own lives, we fail to see we want each other to be the same. We want each other to think the same. We want each other to act the same. And we want each other to do the same things in the relationship and have equality in every way, shape, and form. And when the scriptures keep crying out, no, I've created you differently. And that difference is what Christ has built the family on. And so what I want to do today, we're in kind of this unique, we have this last week before we start Advent. And I thought, I don't necessarily think we need to go into Advent talking about masters and slaves. I'm not really sure how we're going to work that. So we're going to, over the next month and over the next several weeks, focus on Christmas and focus on the coming of Christ. So I want to wrap up this section of Ephesians 5, and then we'll do Advent before we get into Ephesians 6, going into the new year, and I think be some helpful foundational things there for us. And actually next week, I won't even be here. Pam and I are going away to a marriage conference. We're going to a weekend to remember next weekend. And I just want to stress to all of you that this is a good thing, that these can be phenomenal tune-ups. These are not like, gee, we have to take this relationship to a doctor because it is so bad, it needs emergency care. No, it's more like it needs maintenance along the way that's good for all of us. Whether you're thinking of health or car repairs, there's just normal maintenance things that are really, really good for a relationship. And so Pam and I are excited about going away for a time of just what are some things we may not even realize we may need to look at for some little maintenance things. Where do we continue to do the things that we're doing well and work on the things that seem to be going great for us? So we're going to be gone next week. Dan Hubiar is going to be starting Advent off for us and talking about the beginning point of preparing our hearts for Christmas. But for today, I thought, what if we just kind of wrapped up this several weeks? Because I know there's been a lot there. And I know I've had multiple conversations. And some people felt like I've stressed things a little too much and other things not quite enough. So today, the whole sermon, more or less, is going to be under the headline of application. What do we do with what we've seen in Ephesians 5? And what are some practical things we can do with this to work out the scriptures in our own lives and relationships? And this is not just for married couples. In fact, the third section of the notes today is for everybody to remember. If we would all get back to the Jesus way of talking and the Jesus way of relating to one another, then I think our church would experience phenomenal health and personal growth. So we're going to back up here to summarize Ephesians 4 and 5 with practical help for living out God's radical plan for marriage. Okay? Step 1, wives. We're going to start with wives just because we got to start somewhere. And I'm going to just let you know right up front, this is not my material. Almost nothing in here is unique to me. I mentioned this focus on the family that I heard and I listened to, and a guy was on there. It was his first time talking on there. He just had come out with some new material, and his name was Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. And you've heard me talk about this before. If you go into my office, you'll see copies of this book. When my daughter and son-in-law got engaged, we put copies of these into their hands and the workbook that goes with it. When Pam and I have done some premarital counseling for folks, we cover this material. Why? Because it speaks directly out of Ephesians 5. Dr. Emerson Eggerichs pastored for years and years. He did a lot of family counseling and family practice. He had seen things over the years, and as he started to put them together, when he went and pursued his PhD in counseling at a secular university, I think University of Wisconsin, he focused on Ephesians 5:33 and how he saw Ephesians 5:33 as a bedrock, as a foundational verse for men and women in their marriages and relationships. And his dissertation work was actually out of Ephesians 5 and why women need love and men need respect. So Love and Respect is the name of one of his books. The Language of Love and Respect is something we're going to learn. How do you show respect to your husband? How do you show unconditional love to your wife? And maybe some memory device and things that we can use to put into place. And so all of this then becomes sourced out of Scripture. And again, I will show these to you. I'll make them available to you. I buy them in bulk sometimes so we can start handing them out. I think it'd be a phenomenal study for married couples to go through, even as a group together, work through the workbook in a class or Bible study kind of setting. So a lot of what you're going to hear this morning is coming from Dr. Eggerichs, who over the last 20, 25 years, his ministry has just become so well known as people have found there, like I did, like, that's why I think the way I do. That's why I act and react often so poorly when I have, because my problem wasn't my problem. My problem was I didn't know what my problem was. And my problem is I focus on respect and she focuses on love, and I didn't understand that. And I would treat her with respect, but not in loving ways. and that causes problems. So we've talked about some of these things over the week. So here we go. There's a lot of stuff to get through. I'm going to try to get through it. I've got a lot of scriptures in here with some of these. We may not read every single one of them this morning, but I want to make them available to you. So, wives, if you can decode a guy's language and then remember to put it into place, chairs, Chairs. You say, what do you mean by decode his language? Here's just kind of a summary statement that's going to go for all of us, men and women. Whatever offensive or defensive words might have been spoken in your relationship, always listen for your spouse's basic needs. Men, women. At the very bottom of things, in every case and in every conversation, you individually can do your part for your marriage, and you can do a huge favor for your marriage, men, by assuming she is seeking to feel loved. Even if it sounds like she's angry, she feels upset at you, you hear disrespect, you hear harsh, whatever was said, can you assume at the base of it, she needs to be loved? And women, if you will assume at the basis of his words, he is seeking to feel respected, then give your spouse some grace and try to meet their need and understand. So some of these things may seem like, wow, you're really unilaterally just talking to women like it's all their responsibility. It is, 100%. And then I'm going to talk to men like it's all their responsibility, 100%. You get where that's going? We talked about that last week. If you will see your responsibility as 100% of what needs to be done, I think God's grace will flood your marriage. I was part of a conversation not too long ago. I wasn't really part of it. I was there for the conversation. It was happening in front of me. There was a women's ministry leader who was actually talking about this love and respect material and saying that for the last 15 plus years, she has been leading women's groups through this love and respect material. And as women have understood it and they've taken it to heart, it's revolutionized their marriages. Now, she was having this conversation with an older woman who was also a Bible teacher. And this older woman kept saying, but what about the men? But what about the men? And this younger women's leader was saying, now see, we're focusing on the women in our women's group. And the men, they should probably do this in their men's group. But if wives will focus on this in their wives' groups, they can single-handedly revolutionize their marriages and change their husbands in a godly, scriptural way. Because when their husbands feel respected and are respected and appreciated, they become so incredibly loving. Now, this was the testimony of this women's ministry leader, but the older Bible teacher she was talking to kept saying, but what about the men? But what about their role? And the younger guy was saying, I'm focusing on what women need to do. And the response was, but men don't. And then she started evidencing that she doesn't really catch the respect thing. I was there, another pastor was there. We both kind of looked at each other, and we just kind of did that, melt into the bushes kind of thing. And then we slowly left and went to another place. And he and I looked at each other and went, I didn't want to be part of that conversation. And we didn't. We just left them to talk it out between each other. So this is going to be kind of one of those, wives, if you hear this, go, but what about the men? Well, we're going to get to them because they are 100% responsible to love you unconditionally, period. If you hear some of this go, well, that emphasizes my role too much. Listen, if you will give grace to your partner and you will take it on yourself to act out in these scriptural ways, I think it'll bring great change to your relationship. So if at the heart of every conversation, and in every case, in every conversation, if you can assume that what he's seeking is respect and he feels like he hasn't gotten it, what she's seeking is love and she feels like she hasn't gotten it, and then you act and do your part, you'll stop this crazy cycle that we've seen and actually start an energizing cycle. Women, one of the first things you can do is recognize his need for conquest. You're like, conquest? Genesis chapter 2:15. We know that men and women were created different. We know that from the very beginning, men were created to conquer, to have a task, to have work, to have something to do triumphantly. Look at Genesis 2:15. The Lord God took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate it, to keep it, to take it over, to rule it. Man was created inherently with this task of ruling, conquering in a positive way, cultivating, establishing, building, doing. He's got this innate drive for conquest inside of him. So women, if you will appreciate his desire to work and achieve, that will recognize his need for conquest. And follow up with, if he feels his work is unappreciated, you may be hearing it in unloving words. And this is trying to figure out your problem is not your problem is knowing what your problem is. If a husband is speaking in unloving words and they're antagonistic and they're defensive and they can be harsh, this may be one of the things he's reacting to without even realizing it. I told you when I first heard some of this, I thought, that's what I'm doing. I didn't know why. I didn't know why I'd get frustrated sometimes, and I would say or do something I knew I really ought to do or say, but I did. And I'd think later, where is that coming from? I know she loves me. She did love me. I felt somehow disrespected, and that disrespect could come from my work. That disrespect could come from some total other area in my life, but I was feeling it, and that would come out of me in unloving words. And I'm not excusing that, but I'm saying when Pam has learned, and she has amazingly learned sometimes, she'll just go, stop. Our problem isn't our problem. Our problem is you feel disrespected. Where are you feeling disrespected? And I go, yeah, that's exactly what it is. I mean, we may be confronting some other thing, but I'll have to stop and go, sometimes I can point to, yeah, this happened, or this was said to me, or from one of the kids, or another person in my life, or some guy in my life. I can point to it and find it. That's how I was expressing it. And when she can recognize that and appreciate my desire to work and to achieve, to have some significance, some position there, that's a really critical thing. That's why so many guys, especially COVID, was hard on families when men lost jobs, when employment changed, and a whole lot of men in our culture lost their conquest. They lost jobs, they lost that being in charge, going and having charge, even if it was just managing a small group of people. Those things feed men's character and personality. And when that was taken away, a significant increase in marital problems in our country the last 3 years. And I think this is one of the leading causes of it. Men have a need for conquest. Wives, if you can recognize it, appreciate their desire to work and achieve, it'll go a long way. Secondly, hierarchy. We've read Ephesians 5, 20 through 25. Let me just go back to it and read it again. It's the Word of God. Wives, be subject to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband's the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body. As the church is subject to Christ, so wives ought to be subject to their husbands in everything. There's a hierarchy in your relationship. Wives, if you can appreciate your husband's desire to protect and provide in your relationship, if his desire to protect and provide is being squelched, he may send these coded messages. He may say unloving things. He may act unlovingly because of this, because he feels like his ability to protect and provide and lead the household is being squelched and stepped on. That's one of those areas, if you can remember and keep in mind, I think it will go much better in your relationship to recognize that hierarchy, that he recognizes that hierarchy, and that he needs that. Next, authority, much from the same verses, but Ephesians 5:25 to 33, I'll just read that final verse. Nevertheless, let each individual among you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see to it that she respects her husband. And we saw that word for respect is actually the word phobeamai, from phobia, that she has that fear, that like fear of God, that reverential awe for her husband. Now, I know someone will go, reverential awe for my husband, and shake your head. It's what a guy craves. It's what a guy needs. It's one of his chief motivating influences in his life. So, if she can appreciate his desire to serve and to lead, and listen for and respect his desire to serve and to lead, to hear it. That's why we're talking about practical. If you can hear in some of even his complaints and unloving words that it comes across in those things, I know I've said harsh and terrible things like, you always this, or you always try to. Those are horrible, horrible phrases. We know it. Sometimes men use those because they feel like their authority has been disrespected. Their opportunity to lead their family has been overlooked. That's one area to critically be aware of. And then insight, 1 Timothy 2:14. I want to read this to you. In 1 Timothy chapter 2, there's so much about relationships, multiple directions. 1 Timothy 2:14 states this. It was not Adam who was deceived, but the woman, being quite deceived, fell into transgression. Now, why are verses like that in the Bible? 2 Corinthians 11:3 will be very similar in what it says. God says there is some sort of insight that men can have, and there is an ability to be prone to deception that women have exhibited since Eve. Those words aren't well received. Those words aren't well liked in our culture. That's why I put them down in black and white. We read them aloud. Men have a desire to have an insight and counsel on things. Wives, if you can recognize his desire to analyze and counsel, and don't let your woman's intuition make you deaf to his desire to analyze and counsel. What do I mean by that? I mean, sometimes you're right. A lot of times, women, you're right. You've assessed it more correctly than he has. You have a better solution than he has. But men have an innate desire to have an insight, and it would seem scripturally a God-given desire to analyze and to counsel and to lead their family in decision-making. And when men feel like that has been stepped on or squelched or overlooked, they can tend to respond in unloving ways. And if you're seeing unloving words and situations from your husband, this might be an area someone go, is that happening? Am I doing that? What if I can instead actually verbalize and appreciate his desire to lead and give counsel and to analyze things and have him work through it? Men respond in love. Relationship with your husband, and this is an interesting one. You're like, well, I know we have a relationship, but this one is that shoulder-to-shoulder friendship that men crave even from their wives, and this may surprise you. Titus 2:4 is one of those passages where women are being talked to about their relationships, and in verse 4 it says, encourage the young women to love their husbands and love their children. And when I was stressing that, love your husband there, we can push things too far with vocabulary and understanding words, but it is the word love here to phileo your husband, and it's more that friendship kind of love. And that always doesn't mean just friendship, and agape doesn't always mean the superior kind of love. But here, Paul seems to be saying, men need your companionship. They want you to be involved in things that they're doing, and this may surprise you. So if you can appreciate his desire for shoulder-to-shoulder friendship. Has your husband ever done that thing like, hon, just come, watch these last 2 minutes of this game with me. Come, look at what happened here. And you're like, I don't give a flip about the game. I'm doing the laundry. I'm taking care of dinner. I'm doing this and that. Why does my husband pester me to stop what I'm doing and do these things? Your husband may be crying out saying, I want you as a friend too. I want you to enjoy the things I want to enjoy. Sometimes they'll want you to see a movie with them. And you're like, why on earth would I want to watch that movie? You may need to hear that in an odd way as your husband actually asking for that shoulder-to-shoulder friendship. That friend whom he can do things with. Wife, certainly you experience that. And you can change this. You know how many Hallmark movies I watched in my life? It's in the thousands, I think. You know how many we're going to watch this Christmas season? And you know what? I enjoy them. I've come around, I guess. I don't know. Now, I also told her I wanted to see the new John Wick going for, and she looked at me and she said, the review said a man gets a pickaxe to his head. Why would anyone want to watch that? I'm like, you're right. Okay. I'll wait for the TV version to come out where they tone it down a little bit and it'll be on DirecTV. Yeah, so we're different, right? But there are opportunities, there are times where men want that shoulder-to-shoulder friendship. Wives, if you will appreciate that and look for it and listen for it, and even though it doesn't make sense to you, if he wants you to watch this replay with him or sit and do this with him or listen to him talk, one of the suggestions I've heard is that, you know, if he's working on something around the house, just go and be near him as he's doing it. And that need you have for conversation and talking about it, push that aside and just be present with him for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Some guys just laugh because we're different that way. So I'm part of this men's group. I've been for years and years, and guys, we know each other, and so many times we just get together and we're like, this is the biggest waste of time in our week. But we wouldn't miss it for the world. Because sometimes we just need to be with other people. And we don't talk about the heaviest stuff. And sometimes we'll go over to, like, if one of the guys is like, man, I can't make it this week, I got to change the brakes on my wife's car. It's like, well, we'll come over. And we'll sit, and we don't help him change the brakes because that's his thing. He's a man, we're respecting his ability to do that unless he asks for it. But 6 of us will sit and watch a guy change his brakes. And we'll talk while and you know what? We need that. Now, I know someone would say, that's about the dumbest thing I've ever heard. What a waste of time for you guys. You know how much you can do? We're building friendships. We're building relationships by doing stuff together and by being shoulder to shoulder and things. One of the greatest ways for men's groups to hang out is like working on something together, doing something together. Why? It's that shoulder to shoulder friendship and experience of something. One's not instructing the other. We're not needing all to do it together. Men have a desire for that kind of relationship. Wives, if you've missed that or not seen that, or just press in to that and pay attention to that and things he's asking. Hey, have you seen this? Let me show you this. Yeah, you might find it silly or dumb or annoying, but maybe it's worth that couple of minutes for his part in the relationship. Sexuality, 1 Corinthians 7, 5, and 6. Dr. Eggerichs took this list of things and gave it to a group of women and asked for their feedback on it. And he said, do some of these sound too harsh towards women? They said, no, don't change it. He took the same list and gave it to a group of guys at his church and asked them to analyze it. And the primary feedback he got was, well, however you want to arrange those, but don't do away with the S. So there you go. Men and sexuality, 1 Corinthians 7, 5, and 6 is stop depriving one another except by agreement for a time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer and come together again, lest Satan tempt you because of your lack of self-control. I say this by way of concession, not of command. Paul basically is saying, here's the way it is. Men crave physical intimacy, and they need it, and it's incredibly important to them. If you appreciate his desire for sexual intimacy, now here's Dr. Eggerich's words. Listen carefully. His desire for intimacy is much deeper than merely physical, if you can grasp that. Sexual intimacy is actually symbolic of his deeper need for respect. There's a proverb in chapter 12, verse 4, that is sort of shocking in its language. I think why it bears being read aloud in the church. Proverbs 12:4, an excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who shames him is as rottenness in his bones. Men have a deep craving for respect, and they experience and exhibit that in a number of ways. And sexual, physical intimacy is part of that. Song of Solomon, chapter 4, I'd urge you married couples, read it. I'm not going to read aloud this morning. Proverbs 5, 15 through 23. This whole section about men and about their sexuality and about how wisdom and respect come into this. Proverbs 5, drink water from your own cistern, fresh water from your own well. Should your springs be dispersed abroad, streams of water in the streets, let them be yours alone and not for any stranger with you. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth. As a loving deer and a graceful doe, let her satisfy you at all times. Be exhilarated with her love. Why? Why would you, my son, be exhilarated with an adulteress or embrace a foreigner? The ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he watches all his paths. Men have a deep craving for physical sexual intimacy, and it is a part of their character. Proverbs speaks to it so often because it's part of who a man is, and often symbolic of their deeper need for respect. These are things that the expert has weighed in on and said these are things that are desperately needed for wives to understand and appreciate and respect their husbands in the marriage relationship. Let me give a summary statement. More often than a wife may realize, her husband will make an unloving comment that is really a cry for respect that needs decoding. His remark may be directed at something she's said or done. It could refer to something else that's happened. And instead of feeling hurt by her husband's seemingly unloving words, a wife can look for possible explanations for his behavior. Seek to fulfill God's call to her and give him the gift of unconditional respect, which he does not deserve. This is not an earned respect. These are key areas that Eggerich, Focus on the Family, a number of others would point us to. Men, let me talk to you for a while. We also need to do some decoding of our wives' language. And if we could remember this little acronym of couple, I think it would go a long way. So here again, the same thing we said up front to women. Whatever offensive or defensive words might have been spoken, men, listen for your spouse's basic need. At the very bottom of things, in every case, in every conversation, you can do your marriage a huge favor by assuming she's seeking to feel loved. And if you hear anger, you hear disrespect, you hear frustration, you hear what seems like a personal attack to you, if you can decode that and assume she's feeling unloved, I have not loved her as I need to love her, she is not feeling secure in the love that I need to make her feel secure in, I've not cleaved to her as I need to cleave to her, assume that what's really going on is she has felt unloved, and then give your spouse some grace and be the one to initiate acting in love. There's a closeness that a wife needs. Genesis 2:24. It's the man who leaves his family. It's the man who is called to leave his father and mother. Before families even existed, before there were fathers and mothers. This is just while it's Cain and Abel, while it's Adam and Eve. Cain and Abel come later. I'm thinking of my week with my siblings. Woo! No. Before all of that, guys, here's the bedrock. Here's the thing. Men, you leave everything and give up everything and you cleave to her. And she needs that, and she craves that, and there needs to be a closeness in your relationship. A loving husband is to cleave to his wife. And guys, that means taking time to talk, even when you don't feel like it. Being affectionate in ways that she knows and responds to, and drawing close to her heart. Not just when you want physical intimacy. You got to throw that in there for guys. Because a lot of relationships, and I've heard this over the years in church, he only treats me nice when he wants sexual intimacy. He only acts that way when he wants something. This is not the reciprocal thing, guys. This is not, oh, if I put these coins in, I'll get this back. Oh, if I do these things, then I'll get what I really want. No, men, this is you doing what God has commanded you to do in loving your wife unconditionally as Christ loved the church. We spent a whole week on that. When the church did not deserve it, had not earned it, could not earn it. You love your wife unconditionally, and you work, if you have to force yourself to be close to her in ways that she can understand, particularly in your communication, showing her your affection. You do the work of finding out, go to Gary Smalley's 5 love languages. How does she express love and give and receive love? What are ways that most speak to her, most communicate to her? And you do those things. Openness, Colossians 3:19. Colossians has those parallel passages to Ephesians 5. There's other instruction there that Paul has given. Colossians 3:19. Husbands, love your wives. Do not be embittered against them. Part of this, don't be harsh with them. Don't be embittered against them. Be open with them. Because a lot of guys don't choose to be and don't want to be open, but wives need that from us. So a loving husband is to be kind and gentle, opening up to his wife and sharing his thoughts and ideas instead of acting preoccupied. You know what it means to be preoccupied? It means that you're occupied with something else. And when you get to that space to be with her, your mind is already preoccupied on something. You've already given that space to something. You're thinking about something else. You're thinking through something else. You're in a different box than she is. And she needs you to be there with her, present with her. Sharing your thoughts and ideas, not acting preoccupied, not being disinterested, whereas if you're mad at her, and guys, we come across that way sometimes, like we're angry, we're unloving. Why? Because you didn't sit and talk with her. You didn't spend time with her. But I was busy. I was doing important things. She needs your openness and your closeness with her. And she needs your understanding. 1 Peter 3:7. Not that you will fully understand her. I don't think that's possible in this life. 1 Peter 3:7. Husbands, likewise, live with your wives in an understanding way as with a weaker vessel, since she is a woman. Grant her honor as a fellow heir of the grace of life, so your prayers may not be hindered. Guys, this stuff can affect your spiritual relationship with the Father if you're not doing these things. If you're not understanding her and treating her as though she needs you to treat her, gently, with care, with compassion, lovingly, tenderly. All of those things are in that sense of with a weaker vessel, not in that, oh, she's weak, she's helpless, she's worthless. No, no, no. Don't expect her to be like you. Don't expect her to think like you and act like you. You love her in an unconditional way. What does that maybe look like? A loving husband is to live with his wife in an understanding way, willing to listen when she's concerned or has a problem instead of trying to fix her. Now this one, we've probably all seen the video. It's not about the nail. It's not about this sweater. It's just stop trying to fix everything, guys. Because we do. That's what we do best, right? We fix things. We just fix it, take care of it, and it's just logical. Let's just do it. That goes back to some of our hierarchy and conquest stuff and what we think we need to do all the time. And very often, your wife does not want you to fix things. She just wants you to listen and to be there. It's one of those first things you hear in any kind of marriage seminar or any kind of thing with couples and relationships. But guys, we can't forget it and walk away and act like we know it and not do it. And we have to constantly be willing to put ourselves in a place where when she wants to talk, we need to have time and space where we can sit and we can listen and we can respond and we can be in the relationship with her. And as you listen, let her know that you're interested. Pay attention. Give appropriate feedback. Those are some of those fine details that you as a couple have to work out, but is an absolutely necessary part of a relationship. Peacemaking, Matthew 19:6. Matthew 19, most of you know well about forgiving someone and going to them in forgiveness and asking for forgiveness. A loving husband's got to be willing to say, honey, I'm sorry for X. And not just, honey, I'm sorry I upset you. Name it. I'm sorry I was stupid enough to actually say with my own stupid mouth this. Can you believe that came out? Okay. I'm sorry I did this. I'm sorry I said this. I acted in this way. Be specific with it. Will you please forgive me? And ask for her forgiveness. Don't assume it. Don't say, well, I'm sorry I did that. And leave it there. Let her know that you need her forgiveness. You stand in position of needing to be forgiven because you wronged her. So we've got to be willing to say, I'm sorry for X. Be specific. Will you please forgive me? Because you know that you and your wife are to no longer be two but one, living in peace and harmony. You didn't just leave your family for her. You left so the two of you could become one flesh. Why would you say something hurtful or harmful or unloving or unkind to her? When I get to that point, I'm like, why on earth did I? And sometimes I can figure it out because I felt disrespected. Does that make it right? No. Does that mean, well, I get some leeway here because she started it, she disrespected? No. It's 100% on me to be the one who leads us spiritually by being the one to ask for forgiveness, by being the one to enter into peacemaking with her. Loyalty. Malachi 2:14 and 15. There's a lot of ways to express this. It would seem remiss to not bring up Malachi at some point in this study. We looked at him when we were going through the minor prophets, and God had a lot to say there about marriage and about dishonoring our marriage relationships, dishonoring them. Israel was dishonoring them as a nation, and their nation was crumbling because of it. God help us in the church with our relationships. Our nation may be experiencing a lot of its difficulty because we aren't getting marriages very good in the church. We're not working on them well. We're not getting them right. Malachi 2:14 and 15. Yet you say, for what reason, Lord? For what reason have we disfavored you? Because the Lord has been a witness between you and the wife of your youth, against whom you have dealt treacherously. Though she's your companion, she's your wife by covenant. Not one has done so who has a remnant of the Spirit. In other words, if you're spiritual, if you're possessed by the Spirit of God, let no one deal treacherously against the wife of your youth. What do you mean treacherously? Being disloyal in any way. Can I just say right now, I'm very thankful that this isn't a needed precaution in the church because I've not observed it, but let us continue not to be people who make fun of marriages. Let us not be people who make fun of or even joke about divorce or adultery or disloyalty in any way. You're like, well, why would we? You haven't. You don't. That's good. But you probably have been around other people, as I have, even in other churches, who make light sometimes of these things, who make light of the marriage relationship, even using names, well, you know, the old man or the old woman or the old ball and chain. I mean, let's not go there. Let's not deal treacherously in our speech, and certainly not in our actions in any way. Guys, these are just things to keep in mind. But it doesn't just mean don't have an affair and let's deal treacherously with her. Don't joke about it. Don't get around it. I would think in today's modern culture, a lot of this we could also add in, don't be disloyal digitally. Don't be disloyal visually. Don't deal treacherously with your wife with the unbelievably horrid and easily accessible garbage that surrounds us every day in what you watch, in what you could see. And there's certainly a study that would be good to look into about how a man loves himself and loves his own flesh in Ephesians 5, but how he's supposed to love his wife, and where there is such propensity in our culture for today for self-gratification and sexual immorality that is, well, it's secret, it's just online, it's just digital. I'm sure several of you saw weeks ago, because it was on Fox News headlines, about a pastor/mayor in a small town in the South who was living in a fantasy life online, acting out himself as a fantasy character online and dressing in women's clothing and posting pictures and writing fictional stories about killing someone else to steal their husband. I mean, he had gotten so wrapped up in this digital world that it started working itself out in his daily life, and he even stood before his congregation and said, well, what I do there doesn't affect me spiritually. What I do there doesn't affect me here at the church. And I thought, buddy, every single thing you do affects you in the church. Every single way that you act, whether you think it's in private in some way nobody else sees, affects you spiritually. It affects your spiritual life. So men, if I could just say and stress loyalty to your wife in every arena of your life. A loving husband's always assuring a wife of his love and commitment, and he's acting in loving and committed ways and making her feel secure in the covenant they have together so that she knows he would never deal treacherously with her. And then esteem, 1 Peter 3:7. I think we've already read the verse where a loving husband honors and cherishes his wife in specific ways, making her feel that she is first in his heart, because she should be. And at the very least, you have to be acting in that way and honor her as a fellow heir of the grace of life. Why? Because these are things that she needs. These are ways that she thinks and things that she desires. I'm sure you probably haven't memorized these just by writing them down, but maybe take notes and keep them handy. These will be posted online for us. So here's a summary statement for men. Often a wife will make comments that sound disrespectful to the husband. Many of the remarks are really cries for love, men, that you need to decode and understand. She talks this way because she sees or thinks she sees her husband's not fulfilling God's call to love his wife as he loves himself. Whatever a wife might say that sounds negative or critical, if you will assume that underlying her words is a primary need for love, it can usually be met if you practice these things for her and to her. And then just briefly, I guess, by way of application of some of this for everyone, remembering the Jesus way of talking. Our daughter goes to Tufts University. Hadn't heard of it before she started looking into it. Most of you aren't familiar with it. It's a school up in Boston, big university. But the letters just tend to work for this acronym. So, TUFTS, we're going to get into, if husbands, men, if your loving words bless, they will bless regardless of her respectful word. Her respectful words bless regardless of his loving words, meaning, husbands, you got to start. Even if she hasn't been treating you in respectful ways, she hasn't been giving you respectful words, hasn't been seemingly appreciating you in the ways you need, your loving words will bless your marriage and your relationship if you act on them. Wives, even if he hasn't been doing his part, and he hasn't been loving you as Christ loved the church, and he hasn't been loving you sacrificially, and you're aware of it, and you feel it, and it's been killing you inside. If you will start appreciating and giving him respectful words, you will bless your marriage, and you will bless your relationship, regardless of whether he's done his part. So, here's a passage in 1 Peter 2, and how we ought to be viewing one another, speaking to one another, and how we ought to be viewing our part in this. And I want to read it, even though I know we're short on time this morning. 1 Peter 2:18. If you will have this mindset, servants, that's all of us, this isn't a slaves, masters things, this is us before God. Be submissive to your masters with all respect, not only to those who are good and gentle, but to those who are unreasonable. For this finds favor if for the sake of conscience towards God, a man bears up under sorrow when suffering unjustly. Husbands, even if you feel like you're suffering unjustly in a relationship, if you will bear up and work as though towards God, that's what you're called to do. For what credit is there if what credit is there if when you sin and are harshly treated, you endure that with patience? But if when you do what's right and you suffer for it, you patiently endure it, this finds favor with God. For you've been called for this purpose, since Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example to follow in his steps, who committed no sin, nor was there any deceit found in his mouth. While being reviled, he did not revile in return. While suffering, he uttered no threats. He kept entrusting himself to those who judge righteously, to him who judges righteously. He bore our sins in his body on the cross, that we might die to sin and live to righteousness. For by his wounds you were healed. You were continually straying like sheep, but now you have returned to the shepherd and guardian of your souls. The next several verses remind all of us that we are to take it upon ourselves to live rightly. The final two verses, 8 and 9, sum up, let all be harmonious, sympathetic, brotherly, kind-hearted, and humble in spirit. Don't return evil for evil, husbands, wives. Don't get on that cycle. Do not return insult for insult, because you know it will only tear down the relationship further. But give a blessing instead. Words of hope, words of security, words of happiness, words of life. You were called for the purpose so that you might inherit a blessing. How have we seen how we ought to talk to one another throughout the book of Ephesians? Truthfully. Ephesians 4:20, say only the things that are truthful. Uplifting. Only use the words that are necessary for building up, for edifying one another. But I'm hurt, but I'm angry. Don't express it in words. Instead, remember what you were called to do, just as Christ was called to suffer for those who did not deserve it. And use only uplifting words. Forgiving one another. Ephesians 4 reminds us, just as God in Christ Jesus forgave us. Say words that are forgiving and thankful for one another in everything and for everyone, giving thanks in our words. And only words that are scriptural. Only words that come from God. Only words that are true. Folks, if we in the church would introduce this into our relationship, not just things that are true, because you think they're true, but that if they're true and they're uplifting, and they express thanks and they're scriptural, they need to cover multiples of these categories. I know this was very different today. It's very practical oriented. I guess I've done so much reading on these last weeks about this. It's kind of those things that I want to get into your hands and available to you online. Sometimes our problem isn't our problem. Our problem is we don't know what our problem is. Maybe in your relationships, maybe in your family, maybe in your marriage. The problem is something underlying that you haven't seen before, haven't addressed before. My hope would be that by this time we've spent in Ephesians, you would do your part to start thinking differently, give your family member the benefit of the doubt, and maybe they're crying out, feeling unloved, feeling disrespected, and then you figure out between you and God how you need to respond in kind. Let me pray. Father, God, these things are so difficult and so complex. We surely do not understand the differences in how you've created male and female, how you've created us to work, to think, how you've hardwired us so differently. God, our desire, though, is to be faithful to you. You've told us in Ephesians you have a radically different plan than the world does. And these things are hard. They cost us in a different way than the world would ever want to. God, I pray that you would strengthen marriages here at Grace Fellowship. I pray that you would strengthen families. I pray that you would bring healing to relationships, that you would bring healing and forgiveness where there have been wounds, maybe even deep wounds over the years. God, that you would revolutionize men and husbands in the way that they think of and treat their wives. That you would revolutionize women and wives in the way that they think of their husbands. God, that you would bring greater respect and greater love to each of our lives. We desperately need you. We pray that you would come and build us up and do things in and through us. In your Son, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Worship team, come and lead us in a